The sky over Valar Prime burned with celebration. Across 1,000 worlds, the Dominion rejoiced. Their fleet had returned victorious, their banners streaming across orbital platforms like rivers of light. The war was over. The last resistance world, a stubborn, defiant rock called Refuge 7, had been reduced to ash and silence. The Valar had won. In the grand chamber of the High Command, Minister Kale stood before the assembled council, his forearms spread wide in triumph. Behind him, a holographic display showed the smoking ruins of Refuge 7. Its cities shattered, its forests burned, its oceans boiling away into steam. They fought well, Kyle said, his voice echoing through the hall, but they fought alone. And now they are gone. The resistance is broken. The free colonies are no more. The council erupted in applause, chittering, roaring, humming approval in a dozen languages. For 3 centuries, the Dominion had spread across the stars, absorbing species, crushing opposition, building an empire that stretched from the galactic core to the outer rim. And now, finally, there was no one left to resist. Kyle's expression softened. Let us not forget what we have achieved. Peace, order, unity under the Dominion banner. The chaos of independence is over. The age of... A tone, soft, low, barely audible. Kyle paused. The council fell silent, heads turning, sensors flickering. The tone came again. Clearer now. A deep rhythmic pulse that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the chamber. What is that? Someone asked. A technician stumbled forward, her face pale, her translator struggling to keep up with her panicked words. Minister, we're detecting a signal. Origin unknown. It's old, very old. Broadcasting on frequencies we haven't used in over 200 years. Kale's eyes narrowed. Source? Refuge 7, sir, subsurface. Someone down there is still alive. The chamber erupted in confusion. Impossible. The bombardment had been total. Nothing could have survived, but the signal continued. Steady, persistent, a heartbeat in the void. And then, it changed. The tone became a voice, crackling, distorted, but unmistakably organic. Human. This is Lieutenant Mara Cross of the Free Colonies Defense Force. To anyone receiving this transmission, Refuge 7 has fallen. We are the last. If there's anyone out there, if anyone remembers the old codes, we need help. We need... Static swallowed her words. Kale stared at the display, his 4 hands clenched. Silence that transmission immediately. We're trying, sir, but it's not just broadcasting locally. It's bouncing off relay stations, old comboys, even dead satellites. It's spreading through the network like what? The technician's voice was barely a whisper. Like it was designed to. Kale's blood ran cold because he knew what that meant. He'd studied the histories. He'd read the classified archives, the ones the Dominion kept locked away, the ones that spoke of the early wars, the dangerous years before the Empire's rise, the ones that mentioned Earth. Shut it down, he ordered. Now. But it was too late. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, in outposts and stations and ships drifting through the black, the signal arrived. Most dismissed it as interference. Some thought it was a prank. A few recognized the language, ancient Terran, and felt a chill they couldn't explain. And in the deepest reaches of space, far beyond the Dominion's borders, far beyond the reach of any living empire, something heard it. Something old. Something patient. Something that had been waiting. Revenant. Deep space. Sector unknown. The ship was a ghost. It drifted through the void like a tomb, its hull scarred and silent, its running lights long dead. For 200 years it had floated here, forgotten, hidden among the debris fields and radiation storms that made this region of space a graveyard. No one came here, no one remembered it existed, but inside, in the cold darkness of its core, something still lived. Deep within the command deck, a light flickered. One, then another. Consoles hummed to life, their screens glowing pale blue in the blackness. Ice cracked and fell from frozen terminals. Air hissed through vents, stale and ancient, and in the center of it all a pod opened. Commander Ryan Voss woke with a gasp. His lungs burned. His heart hammered. His skin was numb, his muscles stiff, his mind struggling to remember where he was, when he was, why he was. The signal. He heard it through the ship's internal comm, faint but clear, a voice calling through the darkness. If anyone remembers the old codes, Ryan's eyes snapped open. He tore the frost from his face, ripped the tubes from his arms, and stumbled forward, his legs barely holding him. Around him, other pods hissed and cracked, other figures stirring, gasping, waking. His crew, his ship, his mission. He reached the main console and slammed his hand down, his voice raw. "This is Commander Ryan Voss of the Human Systems Alliance. I'm reading you, Refuge 7, hold on. We're coming," static answered him. Then, faintly, a woman's voice. Broken. Hopeful. "Earth?" Ryan's jaw tightened. He turned to the crew stumbling onto the bridge, their faces pale, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. But he saw something else in them too, something he'd thought had died with their world. Purpose. "All hands to stations," he said quietly. "Wake the fleet. Charge the drives. Prep for combat jump." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Aisha Okafor, staggered forward, her voice hoarse. "Sir, how many are we?" Ryan pulled up the ship's manifest, his eyes scanning the numbers. 12 dreadnoughts, 48 cruisers, 116 frigates. All dormant, all waiting, all that was left of humanity's war fleet. He met her eyes. Enough. Across the dark, one by one, the ships began to wake. Their engines flared to life, burning cold blue in the void. Their weapons powered up, charging after centuries of sleep. Their hulls, battered and worn, straightened with grim purpose. And from the HSS Revenant, a message went out, encoded, ancient, carried on frequencies the galaxy had long forgotten. Earth answers. The Dominion didn't believe in ghosts. Minister Kale stood in the operations center of Valar Prime, staring at the tactical display with growing unease. Around him, analysts worked in tense silence, their screens flickering with data that made no sense. "Show me again," he said. The lead analyst, a nervous Trell named Vosic, manipulated the hologram. 3 hours ago, we detected gravitational anomalies in Sector 447. Old space. Dead space. Nothing there but radiation and debris. And now? Now there are ships, Minister. Dozens of them. They appeared out of nowhere. No jump signatures, no engine trails. They just woke up. Kyle studied the display. The vessels were arranged in a perfect formation, moving with coordinated precision. Their design was angular, brutal, and utterly unfamiliar. "What species?" he asked. Vosic hesitated. "That's the problem, sir. Our database has no match. The hull composition, the reactor signatures, the weapons arrays, none of it corresponds to any known civilization. It's as if they're from before," Kyle finished quietly. The room fell silent. Every empire knew the stories. Before the Dominion rose, before the Great Expansion, there had been others. Civilizations that burned bright and died young. Most were forgotten. Their worlds were ruins. Their names were dust. But one name lingered in the archives, whispered in the oldest records, marked with red warnings and sealed files. Earth. "Impossible," Kyle said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The humans are extinct. They destroyed themselves centuries ago. Everyone knows—" "Sir," another analyst interrupted, her voice shaking. "The ships are moving, heading for the refuge system." Kale's heart sank. "Where our fleet is?" "Yes, sir." He straightened, pushing down his fear. The Dominion fleet was the most powerful armada in the galaxy. 300 warships, battle-tested and victorious. Whatever these ghost ships were, they would be crushed like everything else that stood against the Empire. "Send word to Admiral Thren," Kale ordered. "Intercept and destroy." Dominion fleet. Refuge system. Admiral Thren was a Valar of the old school. 4 arms, 3 eyes, and a career built on ruthless efficiency. He'd conquered 12 worlds, crushed 9 rebellions, and never lost a battle. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, watching the approaching contacts with cold calculation. "Distance?" he asked. 4 million kilometers and closing, Admiral. They're not slowing down. Weapon status? All batteries charged. Missile tubes loaded. Fighters ready for launch, Thren nodded. His fleet outnumbered the intruders 3-1. The outcome was inevitable. "Hail them," he ordered. "Give them one chance to surrender." The comm officer worked his console, then frowned. "No response, sir. They're not even acknowledging our transmission." "Then they've made their choice," Thren raised one hand. "All ships, weapons free. Destroy them." The Dominion fleet opened fire. Space erupted in light. Thousands of missiles streaked across the void. their warheads glowing like angry stars. Energy beams slashed through the darkness, converging on the approaching human ships, and then something impossible happened. The human fleet didn't evade, didn't scatter, didn't even slow down. They accelerated. Point defense systems came online. Not the clumsy laser grids of modern navies, but something else. Railguns, hundreds of them. Firing in coordinated patterns so precise, so fast, that the incoming missiles simply ceased to exist, torn apart by walls of magnetically accelerated metal. The energy beams fared no better. The human ships' hulls were black, not painted but coated in something that drank in light, absorbed heat, dispersed energy. The beam struck home and simply vanished. No explosions, no damage, nothing. What in the void? Thren began. Sir, they're launching. From the human dreadnoughts, hatches opened. But these weren't missiles. They were smaller, faster, shaped like daggers. Fighters. No, not fighters. Not in any conventional sense. These craft moved like living things weaving through space with impossible agility, their trajectories defying physics, their speed beyond anything Thren had ever seen. Intercept them, he roared. The Dominion fighters launched, swarming forward to meet the threat. For a moment, the space between the fleets became a chaos of light and metal, ships wheeling and diving, weapons flashing. Then the human craft opened fire. What came from their guns wasn't energy or explosives. It was solid matter, moving at relativistic speeds. Kinetic kill vehicles so fast they couldn't be dodged, so dense they punched through shields like they weren't even there. Dominion fighters exploded. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. In under a minute, Thren's entire fighter screen was gone, reduced to expanding clouds of debris, and the human fighters kept coming. They slammed into the Dominion line like thrown spears, targeting engines, reactors, command bridges. Explosions rippled through the fleet. Ships listed, burning. Others broke apart, their hulls torn open. Return fire! All batteries. Thren screamed. The Eternal Dawn fired everything. Its main cannons, its missile tubes, its secondary batteries. Other ships followed suit, pouring fire into the darkness. A human cruiser took a direct hit from a plasma lance. Its shields flared and held. Another was struck by a spread of fusion missiles. The warheads detonated against its hull, nuclear fire washing over the black metal. When the light faded, the ship was still there. Still advancing, undamaged. How? Someone whispered. Thren had no answer, because he was beginning to understand. These weren't ships from some forgotten species. These were weapons. Weapons built by a civilization that had perfected one thing and one thing only. War, HSS Revenant. Bridge. Ryan Voss watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Status? He asked. Lieutenant Okafor checked her console. All wings engaged. Enemy formation breaking. We're reading multiple kills. Casualties? None, sir. Their weapons can't penetrate our armor. Ryan nodded. The Dominion fought like most modern navies. Energy weapons, missiles, shields. They'd forgotten the old lessons. Energy could be absorbed. Missiles could be intercepted. Shields could be overwhelmed. But metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed? That was forever. Target their flagship, Ryan ordered. I want to send a message. Aye, sir. The Revenant's main gun, a rail cannon 300 meters long, began to charge. Magnetic coils hummed, building power. In the firing chamber, a tungsten slug the size of a car was loaded and primed. Ryan opened a channel. Dominion flagship. This is Commander Ryan Voss of the Human Systems Alliance. You attacked a human world. You killed human civilians. You thought we were gone. You were wrong. He paused, letting the words sink in. Withdraw from this system. Leave the survivors. Or what happens next is on you. Silence answered him. Then a voice barely controlled. This is Admiral Thren. I don't know what you are, but you're outnumbered and surrounded. Surrender and fire, Ryan said quietly. The Revenant's rail cannon discharged. The slug crossed 4 million kilometers in 8 seconds. It struck the Eternal Dawn amidships, punching through shields, armor, bulkheads, reactors. The ship didn't explode. It simply folded, its spine snapping, its hull crumpling like paper. In 3 seconds, the Dominion flagship was gone. The fleet froze. Ships held their fire. Pilots stopped moving. Everyone stared at the expanding debris cloud where their admiral had been. Ryan's voice filled the silence. You have 10 seconds. Withdraw or join him. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then one by one, the Dominion ships turned and ran. Ryan watched them go, his expression grim. "Helm, take us to Refuge 7, prepare rescue teams." "Sir." Okafor stepped closer, her voice low. "They'll be back. With more ships. More fleets, I know. We're not enough to fight an empire." Ryan met her eyes. "No, but we're enough to remind them why they should fear us. And maybe, just maybe, that'll be enough to stop them from trying again." He turned back to the display where Refuge 7 burned below. "Besides," he said softly, "we didn't come here to win a war. We came to answer a call." Below, on the surface of the dying world, Lieutenant Mara Cross looked up at the sky. Through the smoke and ash, she saw them. Dark shapes descending through the atmosphere, landing craft bearing the symbol she'd only seen in history books. A blue marble. A green and brown sphere. Earth. She fell to her knees and wept. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. The Dominion High Council convened an emergency session. Minister Kale stood before the assembled leaders of 1,000 worlds, his forehands trembling despite his efforts to remain calm. The chamber, usually filled with the proud voices of conquest, was silent as a tomb. On the holographic display behind him, the battle footage played on repeat. Dominion ships exploding, fighters vaporized, the eternal dawn folding like broken glass, and those dark ships, moving through the carnage like shadows, untouchable and unstoppable. 73 ships lost, Kyle said quietly. 4,000 personnel. Admiral Thren among them. The survivors report the same thing. Weapons we couldn't counter, armor we couldn't penetrate, tactics we couldn't predict. "Who are they?" Counselor Reth demanded, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "What species dares challenge the Dominion?" Kale hesitated. Then he gestured, and the display changed. An old file appeared, ancient, sealed, marked with warnings in a dozen languages. At the top, a single word, Terran. 237 years ago, Kyle began. Before the Dominion's rise, there was a civilization that controlled 17 systems in the Outer Rim. They called themselves humans. They came from a world they named Earth, a planet so volatile, so hostile, that it forged them into something different. He pulled up images. Cities of glass and steel, ships that looked like the ones now haunting Dominion space, and soldiers. Bipedal, mammalian, weak by galactic standards. They didn't look like much, Kale continued. No natural armor. No enhanced strength. No specialized biology. But they had something else. Something that made them dangerous. "What?" Reth asked. "They never stopped fighting." Kale's voice was hollow. "Not when they were outnumbered. Not when they were outgunned. Not even when their world was dying. They called it stubbornness. We called it insanity. They fought wars on their own planet for thousands of years before they reached the stars. War was in their blood, in their culture, in their very nature." The council stirred uneasily. "But they destroyed themselves," another counselor said. "Everyone knows this. Internal conflicts. Nuclear fire. Their world went silent." "That's what we believed," Kale said. "That's what the archives said, but now..." He gestured to the footage. "Now they're back, and they're angry." "Then we destroy them," Reth said coldly. "Mobilize the armadas. Crush them before they grow stronger." "With what?" Kale snapped. "They just defeated a Dominion battle group with a fraction of their numbers. Our weapons barely scratched them. Our tactics were useless. If we send more ships, we'll just lose more ships." "Then what do you suggest? That we surrender? That we bow to these ghosts?" Kale was silent for a long moment. Then he said the words that changed everything. "I suggest we talk to them. HSS Revenant. Orbit of Refuge 7. Ryan stood in the observation deck, watching the planet below. The fires were out now. The rescue teams had pulled 800 survivors from the ruins, all that remained of a colony of 20 million. They'd been evacuated to the human ships, given medical care, food, shelter, and hope. Behind him, the door hissed open. Lieutenant Okafor entered, her face troubled. "Sir, we've received a transmission from Valar Prime." Ryan didn't turn. "Let me guess. Threats? Demands?" "No, sir." Okafor's voice was uncertain. "A request. For negotiation." That got his attention. He turned to face her. They want to talk? Their Minister of Defense is offering to meet. Neutral ground, no weapons. He says. She paused. He says they want to understand what happened, why we're here, what we want. Ryan's jaw tightened. What we want is for them to stop burning worlds. I know, sir. But maybe this is a chance. To end this without more bloodshed. Ryan crossed to the viewport, staring out at the darkness beyond. Out there, the rest of the human fleet waited. 12 dreadnoughts, their crews awakened, their weapons ready. 12 ships against an empire of thousands. They'd won one battle. But they couldn't win a war. Not alone. Set it up, he said quietly. But Aisha, if this is a trap, it won't matter, she said with a grim smile. Because we'll remind them what happens when you corner a human. Neutral station. Sector 312. The meeting took place on an abandoned trading post, halfway between Dominion space and the dark zone where the human fleet lurked. Minister Kale arrived with a security detail, his heart's pounding. He'd faced warlords, pirates, and rebel leaders. But this was different. This was meeting a legend. A nightmare made flesh. The airlock hissed open. Commander Ryan Voss stepped through. He was tall for his species, lean and hard, his face weathered by time and war. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with insignia Kyle didn't recognize. No armor, no visible weapons. But Kyle felt afraid anyway, because in Ryan's eyes, he saw something that couldn't be bargained with. Something that wouldn't bend or break. Purpose. Minister Kale, Ryan said, his voice even. You wanted to talk, so talk. Kale gestured to a table. They sat across from each other, two representatives of civilizations separated by centuries and blood. I've read the archives, Kale began. About your people. About Earth. The report said you were extinct. We were supposed to be, Ryan said. 237 years ago our world was dying. Pollution, war, resource collapse. We knew we had maybe a generation left. So we made a choice. What choice? We sent out colony ships, 17 of them, carrying seeds of humanity to 17 different worlds, told them to start over, to build something better than we had. Kale's eyes widened. The free colonies, Ryan nodded. Our children. They didn't remember Earth. We made sure of that. We wanted them to be free of our mistakes, our wars, our violence. We wanted them to have peace. And the war fleets? Insurance, Ryan said. We built them in secret, hid them in deep space, set them to sleep, programmed them to wake if and only if the colonies were ever in danger they couldn't handle themselves. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. We promised ourselves we'd never wake up, that we'd let our children live in peace, that the old human way, the warships and weapons and blood would die with us. Kyle felt a chill. But they sent the signal. Because you left them no choice, Ryan said, and there was ice in his voice now. You didn't come to their worlds offering peace or partnership. You came with guns, you demanded surrender, and when they refused, you burned their cities, you killed their children. You thought they were alone. You thought they were weak. Ryan's hands clenched on the table. You were wrong on both counts. Silence filled the room. Finally, Kale spoke. What do you want, Commander? Revenge? War? The destruction of the Dominion? Ryan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, What I want is for you to understand something. For 300 years, you've spread across the galaxy believing you were unstoppable, believing that might makes right, believing that the strong rule and the weak serve. And maybe you're right. Maybe that's how the universe works. He stood, walking to the viewport, staring out at the stars. But there's something else you need to understand. Humans don't accept the universe the way it is. We never have. When faced with impossible odds, we don't surrender. We adapt. We endure. We fight. Not because we're stronger or smarter or better, but because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. He turned back to Kale. The free colonies didn't call us for revenge. They called us because they needed help. And we answered. But we're not staying. We're not building an empire. We're not here to replace you. Kyle blinked. Then what? We're here to give you a choice, Ryan said. The same choice we gave ourselves. You can keep doing what you're doing, conquering, burning, enslaving. And maybe you'll win. Maybe you'll crush the colonies. Maybe you'll hunt down every human ship and destroy us all. His eyes locked onto Kale's. But every time you attack a human world, we'll be there. Every time you burn a colony, we'll make you pay. We're 12 ships, Minister. 12. But we'll bleed you. We'll haunt you. We'll remind you that conquest has a cost. And eventually, maybe, in a year, maybe in a century, you'll decide it's not worth it. Ryan moved toward the airlock. Or, he said, stopping at the threshold, you can choose peace. Real peace. Not surrender, not servitude. Partnership. Let the colonies govern themselves. Stop the expansion. Build something better than an empire built on fear. And if we refuse? Kyle asked. Ryan's expression didn't change. Then we'll see which lasts longer. Your empire, or human stubbornness. He left. Kyle sat alone in the silence, his mind's racing. He thought of his fleets, his worlds, his civilization. And he thought of those dark ships waiting in the void, 12 ships against thousands. But somehow, impossibly, he believed the humans' words, because he'd seen what 12 ships could do. TSS Revenant. Bridge. 3 days later. Ryan stood at his command station, reading the transmission that had just arrived. Lieutenant Okafor moved beside him. Sir? He looked up, and for the first time in months there was something in his face that wasn't grim determination. It was hope. Kale's convinced the council, Ryan said quietly. They're withdrawing from the free colonies, offering a peace treaty, reparations, recognition. My God, Okafor whispered. We did it? No, Ryan said. The colonies did it, by refusing to give up, by holding out long enough for the signal to reach us. We just reminded the Dominion that some things are worth fighting for. He looked out at the stars, at the darkness that had hidden them for so long. Send word to the fleet. Mission accomplished. It's time to go home. Home, sir? But Earth is gone, Ryan finished. I know. But the colonies are still here. Our children are still here, and they need us. Not as soldiers, as teachers, as guardians, to make sure this never happens again. He smiled, tired but genuine. We came back for one reason. Because when Earth's children called, Earth answered. And we always will. No matter how long, no matter how far. That's the promise we made, that's the legacy we leave. Below, on Refuge 7, Mara Cross stood in the ruins of her city, watching the human ships overhead. They'd come from legend, from history, from death itself, and they'd saved her. She raised her hand to the sky, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the words that would echo across the colonies for generations to come. Thank you. High above, the HSS Revenant and her sister ships turned away from the world they'd rescued, their engines burning cold and blue. They'd been ghosts. They'd been legends. But most of all, they'd been what humanity always was, always had been, and always would be. There when it mattered most. In the void, the signal still echoed. Not a cry for help anymore, but a promise. A reminder. A warning to any who would threaten the children of Earth. 2 words repeating forever. Earth answers.